Hello and welcome to the interview here on France 24. Well, since it erupted over 3 years ago, Syria's civil war has offered a seemingly endless litany of alleged crimes and atrocities committed by all sides in the conflict. Death toll, estimated at well over 100,000, is so hard to verify that the United Nations has stopped keeping count. And the regime of President Bashar al-Assad has come under blistering criticism in the international community for what many say is his no-holds-barred approach to crushing opponents. Now, back in January, a report by 3 former war crimes prosecutors alleged that Bashar Assad had tortured and killed at least 11,000, you heard me correctly, 11,000 prisoners, using methods such as starvation, brutal beatings, strangulation, electrocution. My guest today is one of the co-authors of that report on Syrian detainee torture, David Michael Crane, or David Crane, let's simplify it here. You are the former chief prosecutor for the Special Court on Sierra Leone. You are also a law professor in the United States at Syracuse University. And you were the man who indicted the former Liberian president, Charles Taylor. You're going after Bashar Assad right now. Do you think you have the evidence to do it based on this report, Crimes Against Humanity? Will he see justice before the International War Crimes Tribunal?
Well, I think that we will certainly be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law, a fair court of law, whether it be a Syrian court, a regional court, an international court, that President Assad is committing crimes against humanity, a widespread or systematic attack on civilians. Not just that we found in the particular industrialized killing, but also his attacks on civilians that has been going on now literally for 3 years as I speak.
Let me ask you about this report itself. You use the word industrialized, and systematic attacks, and you were telling me earlier before this interview, not really seen on this scale, in your opinion, since the Holocaust. You have to actually go back to that. Tell me about the evidence. It's based on photographs, as I understand, photographs that were smuggled out of the country by a former Syrian military officer.
Yes, the evidence itself was part of a systematic, almost a bureaucratic approach of documenting the deaths of detainees. You know, as head of the Syrian Accountability Project, and we're monitoring, we're mapping the conflict, developing a crime-based matrix, we've always were wondering where were the detainees going. And just fortuitously, I was asked to be a part of this commission of inquiry, which found where these individuals, some of these individuals were going, and we found that the process by which they were documenting the deaths of these detainees was really a systematic bureaucratic approach. They would starve, beat, and then execute these individuals. They would take the deceased individual, mark them, generally with 3 types of numbering systems for the Internal Security Service, the processing number, and then the number that would match with their report. The bodies were taken from these detention facilities to this military hospital where this individual was, as is part of his job as a forensic photographer, was filming these individuals and then marrying them up, the photograph with the report, and then signing off on it and forwarding up through the chain of command.
Let me ask you this as a former prosecutor. A skeptic listening to this interview might be saying, that's all fine and well. They're not really going to give Bashar Assad the benefit of the doubt. The report would seem credible. A lot of people would be ready to believe this, but it is based on a single source, is it not? How do you place your trust in this single source? Where does that faith come from?
Well, we came into this investigation with our eyes wide open and very skeptical. Our plan was in 3 phases. The first phase was to assess the individual along with his case officer, as well as the mountain of forensic evidence related to the deaths of these 11,000 human beings or so that we were able to statistically estimate. And we found that this individual was incredibly credible. You're looking at 3 former chief prosecutors or prosecutors who have been there, done that. And so our first phase...
One of them indicted Slobodan Milosevic.
That's right, and then of course Charles Taylor. Our first phase was we would take our forensic team, a very experienced forensic team, a forensic pathologist, a forensic anthropologist, and a photograph expert, and they went off and began to look at the photograph, just assess what they had. Ourselves, we brought in what we named Caesar, the individual who brought out these photographs, along with his handler, his case officer, interviewing them separately. The first day was just to come back at the end of it and look each other in the eye saying, do we really have something here? Or is there a manipulation, or is this guy working for somebody?
So you were skeptical yourself when
Absolutely.
you got all this. As a prosecutor, you said, wait a second, who is this guy? Let me play devil's advocate one more time. The initial reports about your report noted in many cases it was funded by Qatar, the government of Qatar. And people who've been following the Syria story will say Qatar is hardly an unbiased player in this conflict. They have funded the anti-Assad opposition with weapons and logistical help. How do you sort of overcome those skeptics and say...
Well, certainly it's a fair point. Yes, it was funded by Qatar, but we never saw Qatar. In other words, we went in, we were told carte blanche to go in and fairly and openly look at the facts and report the facts. Was this individual credible? Was the evidence, the photographs, credible? If they weren't, we were going to tell them. If it was, we were going to tell them. Like I said, in our phase one, we were just going to go in and to see if this guy's for real.
Right.
And then phase two is that we began to then go back and start peeling back the onion and re-interviewing and asking questions for
forensic
days.
Work.
Forensic work. You know, it's interesting. I think your listeners will really find this important. Our chief forensic pathologist came back the first day after he had looked at several hundred of them, of the photographs. And he goes, it's harder to fake the moon landing than actually land on the moon. He goes, I'm here to tell you, gentlemen, these cannot be faked. And this was corroborated by the anthropologist who came in the next day, and then our photograph analysis, just to see if there was a manipulation, that we're taking pictures of the same individuals, et cetera, and it was not the case.
So you applied all the controls and the tests, and it came out credible in your view. I want to go back to what you were telling me, the Syrian Accountability Project. Some people the skeptics will say, oh, well, he's only trying to hold Bashar Assad accountable. But you were telling me this project is about accountability on both sides. You are finding evidence on both the rebel side, among the Islamist extremists, and the government.
Absolutely. We're doing this fairly, neutrally. Initially, we were looking at Assad because that's where all the crimes are being committed. But as this tragedy has been going on now for 3 years this month, it has gotten bloodier and personal. And it's a 50-50, in some ways, a 60-40 split that the, quote, opposition, and I say opposition in a large sense because the opposition is no longer just the Free Syrian Army. It's Islamists and jihadis and other actors coming in from the outside manipulating this horror story that's been going on. And so all sides are going after, sadly, the civilians who are caught in the middle.
Right now, how much coordination is there between prosecutors such as yourself trying to examine this photographic evidence and, say, organizations such as the UN, which have also pointed to widespread and systematic torture, killings, summary executions? Do you coordinate? Do you speak to each other?
Yes. The whole point of the Syrian Accountability Project is to seek justice for the Syrian people, and however that's going to manifest itself. We've shared our findings. We're in phase 3 right now. Phase 4 will begin this summer, sadly. I never thought this would go past phase 1.
What is phase 3?
Well, phase 3 is just a continuing of our project, which is the crime-based matrix, the mapping of the conflict, drafting sample indictments, building a major incident survey, et cetera, for a local, regional, or international prosecutor. But we've shared this data with interested governments, with the UN, with the International Criminal Court. I personally have given that to my good friend Fatou Bensouda, as well as key and trusted members of the Syrian National Coalition.
Let me go back to the first question I was asking you. When and do you see Bashar Assad at a certain point before the International Criminal Court being held accountable for what you say are clear?
Well, there are 4 options as far as some type of accountability. There potentially could be just a Syrian court trying those who committed these international crimes. There could be an internationalized domestic court or internationalized Syrian court with, in other words, international experienced persons would come in and assist them seek justice for the people of Syria. There could also be a regional court, and then there also could be the International Criminal Court. Regardless of what that is characterized as far as how the Syrian people decide to try individuals who have committed these crimes, it's going to be some time, because at the end of the day, it's not a legal decision. I mean, we have the ability. We've got the experience
It's
now.
a matter of political
It'll
will?
be a political decision by the international community in conjunction with some Syrian government, however that manifests itself, to decide to do something. I'm not hopeful.
You're not hopeful. That was what I was going to finally wrap and ask you. You managed to get Charles Taylor indicted. Your colleague got Slobodan Milosevic to be held accountable. This is going to be a tougher case.
Tougher case in the fact that actually at this point in time, President Assad is actually winning the conflict because the, quote, opposition writ large is too fragmented. There are too many players. In fact, they're fighting each other now. And because of that, just from a simple military principle of unity of command, the opposition is split. Assad is getting supported by Russia, by Iran, by various actors around the region. At the end of the day, he's got the upper hand.
We're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, on that slightly pessimistic note. David Crane, thanks very much. You're former chief prosecutor for the Special Court on Sierra Leone, the man who indicted Charles Taylor, perhaps trying to go after now Bashar Assad, but saying it's going to be a very tough task. Thanks for sharing your time with us, moving ahead in a war that has defied any easy resolutions to this point. You've been watching The Interview on France 24.